It's automatic when I talk to old friends. The conversation turns to girls we knew, and their hair was soft and long, and the beach was the place to go. Suntan bodies.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Matt and Steve Show. I'm your faithful co-host, Steve Schnee. We got a great show for you today. On this episode, we are going to discuss the July 16th release of Jem Records Celebrates Brian Wilson, a brand new tribute album featuring exclusive recordings from Jem recording artists, the Weaklings, Jonathan Pushkar, Richard Barone, the Anderson Council, Nick Piunti, the Gold Needles, Lisa Michaels and Super 8, the Gripweeds, and the Midnight Callers. As a matter of fact, Matthew Street and I are joined today by Kurt Reil from the Gripweeds, Chris Paine from the Midnight Callers, and music industry legend Marty Scott, the man who single-handedly created our addiction to import releases and created an amazing musical legacy that continues to the very day. But that's another interview for a different day. But before this interview becomes even more long-winded, I'd like to introduce our host, Mr. Matthew Street.
Hello, you, and so happy to be here with you, my friend. This is going to be very exciting.
Yes, it is.
And are we ready to go? Well, listen, Steven needs no introduction, everybody, but I'm going to give him one anyway because he is amazing. He's multiple shows on YouTube like Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. He does CD Junkie. He does Ronnie Barnett's Boom Boom Room with Ronnie from the Muffs. He's a music journalist extraordinaire. He's a writer with Discussions Magazine, and he does liner notes for numerous record albums. Steve, it's an honor and a pleasure to work with you like this. Let me just say that right off the top.
Thank you very much.
And I also want to thank someone very special, Maureen Piatoso from Jem Records, the publicist over there, for setting this whole thing up. She's done an amazing job, and thank you to Maureen. We appreciate it so much. And also, I am honored to have the three guests with us tonight because let me start with the gentleman over here. Well, from what I can see, he's over on my left or right. I can't tell anyway, but I'm a longtime fan of Jem Records. As Steve mentioned earlier, the man is a legend. He has a well-documented history in 70s and 80s of importing hard-to-find records into the U.S. market. Beatles UK releases, Cheap Trick at Budokan for me. I happen to have one of my originals right here, still with the sticker on it from the early 80s. Mr. Marty Scott, an honor and a pleasure to have you here, sir. And also, long-time Gripweeds disciple right here, Matthew Street. I love the Gripweeds. I've been a fan for so long, since day one, and every one of their albums is so special to me. And they have worked with some of my favorite longtime artists like the Smithereens and Mark Lindsay from Paul Revere and the Raiders. Kurt Reil, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you sitting here before us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but not least, a member of one of my new favorite bands, up-and-coming bands, and their debut album on Jem Records, Red Letter Glow, came out last year, was one of my favorites and many others' favorites. Chris Paine, a pleasure to have you here, sir.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So, as Steven said, we're here to highlight the July 16th release of Jem Records Celebrates Brian Wilson. This is very exciting, folks. This album is the second in a series celebrating the icons of rock and roll. And last year, we had Jem Records Celebrates John Lennon, which did very, very well. It was released on what would have been John's 80th birthday, and numerous accolades on that first album. And I know this second one is going to get just as many accolades and probably do much better because it's a very exciting time to get this album right as summer is beginning. Right, Brian's 79th birthday is coming up. Boy's 60th anniversary is coming up. So let's get right into it right now. And I want to go to Marty first and say, Marty, what were the factors in your decision to choose Brian for this compilation? Why Brian Wilson?
Well, excuse me. Basically, it was one day I just realized it's the 60th anniversary of the Beach Boys, and that was the deciding factor because I was deliberating who I was going to choose for this year's record, and that was basically the deciding factor. This is the year for the Beach Boys. This is the year for Brian Wilson. His new movie was just debuted a week ago today. I don't know really when it's coming out, but that's coming out. The Beach Boys, without him, have embarked in I think a 40 or 50 date tour starting last weekend. They're putting out a box set 2 weeks after our record. I'm sure there'll be tons and tons of interviews. They may actually want to be on your show, after we do it. But that was the reason.
No, that's great. And I have to admit, I'm going to just let all the eggs out of the basket right now. I absolutely love this album. I think it's fantastic. And I have to admit, I'm a fanboy. I'm a fan of every artist on your label. I believe you have one of the best rosters in music today, and I'm being sincere about that. I love the groups and artists that you have on the Jem label.
Thank you.
And many of the selections on here on this album are some of my favorites that Brian and the Beach Boys ever produced. And did you choose the selections for each of the artists to cover, or did you kind of leave it up to them to pick the songs, Marty?
Well, in some cases, like with the Gripweeds or the Anderson Council or Jonathan Pushkar, they immediately knew what they wanted to do. In some of the cases, like the Gold Needles, who really weren't that familiar with the Beach Boys having living in England and stuff, and Nick Piunti, who wasn't sure what he wanted to do. It was a little bit, I gave him a couple of ideas. Lisa Michaels and Super 8, not only did they know what they wanted to do, but they were the first ones to complete it before some of the other acts haven't even decided what to do. Midnight Callers also, they weren't sure which direction it was, so I think we gave them 3 choices and they picked a good one.
I have a question here. I have a question. Now, I'll probably direct this towards Kurt. Brian Wilson is able to take something so complex and make it sound so simple. Now, as a arranger, producer, musician and stuff, what kind of approach did you take to the songs that you did on the record? I mean, did you discover things about these songs that you had never noticed before?
For sure. Well, I mean, the You're So Good to Me was one of the tunes that we did. Mm-hmm. And I just felt with that song, there was a little room in the song for a different kind of arrangement. My first thought was kind of Ticket to Ride. I was thinking, mm-hmm. well, if you put that drum beat to that song, it might do something interesting. Mm-hmm. And I just saw a way in that we could make that song a little bit more Gripweeds-ish. But Heroes and Villains and Roll Plymouth Rock was kind of a whole other can of worms. But with that song, I also felt that there was another arrangement to be found, especially for Heroes and Villains. We could take that song and cast it in maybe a bit more of a rock way, more guitar heavy way. What we found was when we were doing that, a lot of the vocal parts that they did, what the Beach Boys were doing, lent themselves to be guitar parts. And we kind of thought, well, let's do something different than what the Beach Boys did. It's hard. You really got to be on your game vocally to do exactly what they did, because they were so dialed in, with 4-part, 5-part harmonies sometimes, pretty involved. And, we just felt that it's been done. And if we go that route, it will be, the kind of just a redo. So if we find another way if there's another way into that song, particularly Heroes and Villains, that would be it, to make it a little bit more rock and kind of cast the other, like the vocal parts in the backgrounds, make them guitar lines or maybe keyboard lines. And that's what we tried to do, and then besides the fact that we took the 2 songs, we took that and the other song from Smile, Roll Plymouth Rock, and we kind of stuck them together in sort of a creative way.
Right, exactly.
That's a cool part of your tracks on here, is that you retain the charm of the original, but they rock. Both of them have a really cool rock quality to them, which I love personally, but they're fabulous.
Well, we're huge Brian Wilson Beach Boys fans, but Brian looms large, and so that was the way we as a band kind of approach a cover, is to find another way to do it. Right. Because the original version is out there. You don't really need to do it again. Sorry, right. Chris.
Oh, yes.
Do it again. Even though Do It Again, we didn't do it again with that song either. We did it another way.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I helped them with that. But that was really the general idea, was to bring something new to the table, sonically, that you haven't heard, and maybe a different way to do it, and kind of like find another way to express the song.
Well, I just want to mention, you mentioned working with the Midnight Callers, and I was going to say to you, your fingerprints are all over this album. I mean, in addition to performing with the Gripweeds, you're producing, you're doing mixing, you're mastering, you're arranging vocals for tracks on the album. Your House of Vibes studio there in New Jersey, that's one busy place. And I didn't know if maybe you could tell like a brief history of House of Vibes and how you got involved with Marty and Jem Records.
Well, first, thanks, Marty, for bringing the project here. You know, it's a lot of fun to do music you love, and that's kind of how we started in the studio. House of Vibes was it was an outgrowth of basically doing our own demos. It started out that way first, and then what we found was we liked the demo recordings that we did in our own studio better than when we went to a studio and tried to work in, you know, in an actual studio. It didn't work as well, so we stuck to our demo and tried to improve our demos and just improve the studio and kept going. And then eventually a couple of the bands we were playing with at the time, they were going, oh, I like what you did there, and can you work for us? And we thought, yeah, we can do that. And so one thing led to another. We started working with different bands, and we started making little, you know, we did an EP. First thing was like a little 45 EP. And so that's how it started. It was just, you know, because of the music made us do it. And we just opened it up further. That was actually the best thing we ever did, was opening it up to other bands, because opening it up to other bands brought in, you know, all of their creativity and energy. So like you get a band like the Midnight Callers, they have a way of doing things, and every band does. They have their own sort of unique thing that goes on within a band. And working with other bands, I become, you know, I get in there with the band and I find out how they work. And sometimes you find out, oh, they do something interesting with vocals or with guitars. I'd like to try that on the next Gripweeds album. Or, you know, conversely, we did something that we developed as a band. And, you know, the Midnight Callers came in, and maybe we can put that on, you know, I have an interesting idea that I can apply to them, or, you know, so it really goes both ways. And what's good about that compared to just working by yourself is that there's no communication when you're just by yourself in your bedroom, you know, as good as that can be.
Now, let's not besmirch Richard Barone.
No. I don't want to besmirch.
Don't you ever besmirch Richard Barone. Not on my show.
Richard Barone is the only person to record. He recorded in my room, in his room.
He delivered the goods in his room.
Right.
But the thing is, when you get that, you know, communication, you do things you wouldn't normally do. And that's what's good about it, the contact, you know? So that's why I like doing other bands. That's why you know, because it really opens things up and it opens your horizons. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Chris.
Go ahead, Steve.
No, go ahead, Matt.
No, go for it.
No, you're older than me. Go ahead.
No, I am older. Yeah, that's true. No, I was just going to say what Kurt was just explaining, and how he produced the debut album from the Midnight Callers last year. And I was just going to ask Chris, how did you hook up with Kurt in House of Vibe Studios?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously whatever, we're aware of Kurt for like a while. I mean, you know, I was listening to some of, you know, the Gripweeds tracks on Little Steven's Underground Garage, you know, when I was in high school and in college. So then I went, when I moved to the city, I joined a band that actually was produced by Kurt, London Egg, and their second album. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to work with Kurt. I think I came in right at the tail end of anything. But
we remedied that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we got meeting each other, and we got to talking, and I really liked the studio, and I liked the vibe of the place. And you know, after you know, a couple lineup changes and things like that, and then eventually developing, you know, the band that became the Midnight Callers, we had a bunch of, I guess, demos, raw tracks, and we kind of realized that we might have been a tad bit in over our heads when it came to the recording process. And, you know,
no, you did fine. You did.
That's not the reaction. Yes, no, that wasn't the reaction he had when we sent the tracks. He was like, you have the guitar track, but it's the cymbal track. What's going on? So, but yeah, so then, you know, we kind of realized that we needed some help. We needed a bit of guidance and direction. And so just from that connection with London Egg, I hit up Kurt, and he was, you know, interested in it, and he wanted to help us out the best he could. And really, it just kind of snowballed from there. It started with just, can you help us polish these tracks up a bit? And then he came in and really started, you know, co-producing and producing the vocals with us, and it just kind of grew from there. So then when it came time for this album, again, we hit a point where we were like, we're a little stuck here. We don't know what to do with this track exactly vocally. Called Kurt, and then just got right into the studio, and the final product we're really proud of.
Well, we have a really good working relationship.
Oh, yes.
And it's like that's what's good about when you work together with people in a studio. You kind of get this energy and this vibe that happens, and all of a sudden the track's done, you know, before you know it, and you have a lot of laughs on the way, you know.
Right.
And that's the way great records are made, by the way. When you're laughing, when you're having fun, you're not too serious, you're enjoying what you're doing. And that's, you know, it's not drudgery. When you make records that are drudgery, they sound like it, you know. And
good point.
Like Sting. Anyway, Marty,
you know that those guys, the police, still owe me $10,000 that we loaned.
Oh my God!
Boy, I opened up a can of worms. And I didn't.
But you know, you're talking about working in the studio. On one hand, there are things done at the House of Vibes, and on the other hand, I mentioned before, you know, Richard Barone did In My Room, basically in his room. And you had the Gold Needles, who, because of the pandemic in England, had to record their track "Love and Mercy" outside. They couldn't even record it in a studio. They had to record outside on the lawn and have wires going to a little, shack where they were able to get.
They're over in the UK, so I hope they had a good tent.
Yeah,
the weather's
well, they
sucky over
had
there.
a tent with lots of liquor in it, I believe.
Now, Marty, I got a question for you. When you decided on this project, did you have any limitations? Now, obviously, the songs had to be penned by Brian or co-written by him, but did you have limitations? Like, did you say, well, don't go up to the 1985 album and do Get You Back or whatever? Did you have any limitations, or you just?
No, because I want the artists to pick tracks that they felt comfortable with. For example, Jonathan Pushkar, I want to do Dance, 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 you know, and Please Let Me Wonder. That he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he threw in a little bit of Do You Want to Dance inside of, you know, Dance, Dance, Dance. And Lisa Michaels and Sue Break, they wanted to do Don't Worry Baby. So I mean, these were things that were, you know, automatic. I think that interesting way comparing, let's say, the Gripweeds, who recorded in the House of Vibes, and the Anderson Council, who recorded there as well. They had the Weaklings, who the four of them recorded their parts at home. They never even saw each other recording the Help Me Rhonda and Warmth of the Sun. Believe it or not, I mean, with that harmonies and Warmth of the Sun, they were all done in each of their homes because they never got together, you know, at all to do those two songs. So there's all different ways these things were recorded: outside, in an apartment, you know, at people's houses, in the House of Vibes. I'm trying to think of some other.
Sometimes both.
What?
Sometimes both. You know, like I did drums on the Pet Sound Story.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing. They say to me, "Oh, we're doing Pet Sounds." I said, "What are you? That's an instrumental." "Oh, no, they're lyrics." I said, "Lyrics?" And then Lisa has these lyrics with lists about, you know, 20 or 30 different you know, tracks of the Beach Boys. Of course, everything on Pet Sounds is some of the lyrics to that new version. So I said, okay, we'll call it the Pet Sound Story.
Yeah, right.
No, so I got Pet Sound Story. I got it into the studio. Marty sent it to me to mix things here that I think could be improved. So it was kind of like, we asked them very nicely if they would like another drum track, which I played. And that kind of tied it all together. And then I mixed it from there. And that was kind of, you know, they brought the tracks. I think they were recorded in Scotland, right, Marty?
Yeah.
Scotland, and then Lisa did her tracks in LA.
In Scotland, then he sends the tracks to Lisa in LA, and then she does all the stacked vocals and then sends it back to him, and then he mixes it, then he sends it to me, and I send it to you.
So Kurt, on Pet Sounds, you're just doing an additional drum track on that one, or anything else you're involved in?
Well, we replaced the drums that were
Okay.
there. I played to the track and carefully. Usually you do drums first.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, because you really got to be careful about not getting out of time with everybody else. It's a lot easier if you lay the drums down, then everybody has to play to you.
Mhm.
But you really got to be tight. So it's not easy to do it. But then I mixed the track after that as well. So yeah.
Okay, Chris, I know that when you and I did the interview for the Midnight Callers a few months back, I think we briefly discussed this project. I know that you were raised on, the Wiggles and Barney the Dinosaur and stuff. Now, what was it that drew you to the songs that you did?
So we were one of the bands that Marty's talking about that probably dragged our feet, in classic, maybe younger fashion of procrastinating. But
Yeah.
we really,
You're such slackers.
Yeah. And I think we can blame the pandemic. I think that, when you're presented with a task like that, like pick a Brian Wilson song, it was a little daunting for us. I mean, we weren't diehard Beach Boys fans, so we knew kind of the hits, and we're like, well, we don't want to play Surfing USA or something like that. We wanted to, do a really cool, interesting track. So, after a while and some prodding, like Marty, thankfully, just kind of threw some songs at us, and Do It Again was on there. And that's a song that, when you say Beach Boys, it's not the first thing that pops in my head, or Brian Wilson, not the first thing. So when he said it, I went back and listened to it. And then I passed it over to kind of my, co-writer, co-arranger Martin, who's our lead guitarist in the band. And we said, like, what do you think we could do with this? And we just think, because Do It Again and kind of that, that memory and going back a little bit and everything that was going on with, in New York in the time of the pandemic, we said it'd be really cool to do like a trashy New York kind of 70s version of Do It Again, to be like, we're going to get back to what we do in New York City. Which
That's what I wanted to ask you. How did your band decide to approach the track in that style?
Yeah, it was that really. It was like just listening to the lyrics, and obviously they're talking about the the warmth of the sun and walking on a beach with a girl, but just that sentiment of getting back to where you want to be and all the good times that you had. So for us, it was like, let's make it a New York song. And there was one point where we were getting so crazy, we were adding additional lyrics about New York City in it, and then we realized that you can't do that legally. So then we cut that out. But then we still wanted to keep that spirit of kind of that old school New York kind of grit and grime to it. And
and that's what I heard. That's what I heard when I got the track. You guys, I thought that you guys totally nailed that vibe, and I really loved it. It was so different from the Beach Boys, but there needed to be something with the vocals to kind of round it out, and that's where I came in on that track. And we just worked together at the studio, and we had a ball.
Because you have beautiful vocal arrangements on that, Kurt, and then you got that kind of, dare I say, glamish,
It's very
pop kind of sound.
I mean, they wanted to put a T-Rex feel on that thing.
Yeah,
that was the thrill of it, really. That was the fun part of it, to take that song and recast it in a way that you haven't heard,
Right.
So we did do some of the Beach Boys harmonies, I think, but we didn't do them all. We kind of went our own way.
We got kind of the main hooks, so to speak, but then kind of veered off.
We realized that hook had to be there, That's what we realized.
Marty, I know this is it's a difficult position you find yourself in, because what happens if Kurt or Chris or somebody turns into a track and you're going, yeah, this isn't what I'm looking for?
The only artist that recorded more tracks than we used was the Anderson Council. They did 3 tracks, and we used 2 only for space purposes. But Jonathan Pushkar did Dance, 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 and Please Let Me Wander, and he wanted to do a 3rd track. I said, well, you can't do a 3rd track, but why don't you and Richard do a duet on I Get Around.
I get around.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we considered that a Richard Barone track with Jonathan on it. They actually just completed a video in Nashville, which we'll release it probably the week after the album comes out.
Hmm.
I Get Around. So that's how we got that extra track done. Richard did it with Jonathan as opposed to Jonathan doing it because I couldn't do 3 tracks by one artist, not enough room.
Yeah.
But ironically, when the record was basically done, I got a text from Glenn Burtnick saying, "Hey, can we do another track?" I said, "Well, yeah, I guess." He said, "Okay, well, we're going to do The Warmth of the Sun." And I'm thinking, well, that's like a million part harmony, and you guys aren't even like in the same room. So
Yeah.
I was amazed to get that. I mean, it's only 58 seconds long, but the harmonies are brilliant on that thing. And then they did, Help Me Rhonda, which sounds like something off of the Who Sell Out more than a Beach Boys record, the way it, the acoustic guitars and the claves.
Yeah, they really changed the tone of that one.
Really changed it.
The cover art design of this and the liner notes are wonderful on the Brian Wilson tribute. And I didn't know if you could tell us a little bit about the folks involved in that with the design and the liner notes.
Artwork is by Anthony Parisi, who in another world is known as Sketchy Weakling, and he does a bunch of different art for us. And we went through a couple different iterations of the cover, and the original artwork was Brian sitting in his living room with his feet in his sandbox playing the piano. My wife niched that because she says, "Look, you're not going to do an artwork where it makes fun of his mental problems in the 60s."
By the way, she's just not some nagging wife. She designed the cover for the Ramones.
Awesome.
Oh, well, yeah. My wife was
Which, I hate to go off topic, but which albums? I'm a big Ramones fanatic.
well, the first Ramones record is hers. She did that.
Wow, awesome.
She was the art director
She knows.
in the 70s. And then later on, when I started Paradox at MCA, she was the art director there. And she did album covers for the Roaches and Marshall Crenshaw and, a bunch of other bands.
Did she do Life's Too Short? One of my favorite albums of all
she
time.
did.
Oh, man.
He and Timothy White, the guy from this picture from Home Alone,
Oh, yeah.
That's the photographer. So he went up to Marshall's house and took that picture with Marshall's dog out in the field.
That's awesome.
But anyway,
that
mixed it.
Life's Too Short's one of my favorites of all time.
yeah.
Love that album.
Matter of fact, I saw Marshall Saturday night playing with the Weaklings.
Oh, man.
Wow.
That's cool.
We were at the winery in New Hope, and he did that was his first public show with the Weaklings. It's Hank Weakling, that's his name. So the liner notes,
Yeah.
I didn't know exactly who to go to. I wanted an expert. So I said, well, who wrote Brian's autobiography? And I said, it was Ben Gassman. And so I got a hold of him. He actually lives in New Jersey. And I got a hold of him. He said, yeah, it's a cool idea. And so he decided to write them. And he wrote them. And then Kurt and Kristen critiqued what he wrote and found a mistake. Okay, which I had to bring up with him, and he was right. It was about the Smile re-recording in 2004. I believe that's what the mistake was. But he wrote 500 words, and
Right.
I thought
We stumped the expert. We stumped the expert.
I don't know if we go through each of you, if you could, guys could maybe mention a particular Beach Boys or Brian Wilson song or album that is like you consider a particular favorite.
Ooh.
All three
my
of you,
God.
if you take turns here.
Okay. Well, I love them all. It's a silly answer, but I think I go through periods of what I like best. Sometimes it's Pet Sounds.
Right.
Sometimes it's Wild Honey, because that's just such a fun record, and it's really amazing that they went from that surf band and then they became this introspective kind of very, sensitive group. And then they went into the 70s and they had this whole other sound. So they really had this sort of progression in their music so it's really like, I would have to say I like an album from their early period. That would probably be Beach Boys today. Then I'd go for Smile, just because it's so creative. And then I'd go for Wild Honey or something. Just because it's so. Anyway, that's me.
Chris.
it's it's probably cliche, but I'm also just glad because I have the record. So Pet Sounds is my favorite. That's like kind of the go-to. I'm hanging out on a Saturday for some odd reason. I'll just put on the Pet Sounds record and just listen to it as I just chill around the house. But because of us doing Do It Again, I think I've grown to really appreciate 2020. Actually, I was listening to that
Good record.
a couple days ago, and it's a great record.
69. Yep.
Yeah, so that I would probably say those are my two right now.
Cool.
Marty.
This is not my favorite, but the first album I ever bought was Surfing's Greatest Hits, and then was Shut Down Volume 2 in like 1963. There was no British Invasion yet. But I was not a real Beach Boys fan because once I got to be 64, I became an Anglophile, and because of that, we bought shitloads of records, But I was not really much of a Beach Boys fan. I had a band when I was in high school, and then when I was in college, we had a new lead guitar player, and he was an insane Beach Boys fan, and we used to have fights because I wanted to do like Who stuff or Stone stuff, and he wanted to do like Surf's Up, But I like the mid-period Beach Boys, I guess. It's like the 64 to 66. Okay, Pet Sounds is not my favorite. I mean, I think some of the songs like God Only Knows and stuff like that is a killer track. And of course, I like the stuff from Smile, from Good Vibrations and stuff like that. But I enjoyed all the singles that came out between 64 and 66, personally.
Right.
It's funny that you call them mid-period Beach Boys, considering the band has been together for 50 years.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, mid-period before they basically stopped making,
Yeah, I know.
tons of records. Yeah, I mean, you gotta remember.
Actually, it's 60 years now.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. 60. Sorry.
it's hard to believe, I mean, I'm reading Brian's autobiography, the one that Ben wrote, and you sort of get to the part where their father, started taking charge and not taking charge, and I didn't even realize that Shel Talmy, who we all know is an insane producer. The way he got his gig in England as the first independent producer is he took Nick Benet's recordings of the Beach Boys with him to England and told Dick Grow at Decca that he produced these. And he said, "Oh, these sounds good." And that's how he got the gig as an independent producer, because they didn't know anything in England. I mean, I can tell you from the times I went a million times, they still didn't know anything over there. But he took Nick Benet's Beach Boys recordings and some other stuff Nick Benet did at Capitol, and he passed them off as his own productions. And that's how he got to produce the Kinks and the Who and Creation and the Easy Beats and everything like that. Little
Wow.
money.
And actually, I think he's more of a, in terms of fame, he's much more infamous than Nick Benet.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
It wasn't
absolutely.
the Nick Benet's Beach Boys singles. He never got a gig, which is sort of bizarre. No, hardly anybody knows that story.
I mean, Brian, the Beach Boys actually, I don't think they were too happy with Nick Benet because they stopped working with him after the very first album.
Right.
So they moved out of Capitol Studio as well. And they went to United Western in LA. And that's where they did all the classic Beach Boys stuff. I don't know, up till they started working at Brian's house. Was all done at that one Studio 3 in
And
United Western.
Everyone knows the story of the Wrecking Crew and Brian and the stuff that and then the Beach Boys had to learn how to play the songs that the Wrecking Crew had recorded.
I was actually in that room. I was in United Western.
Oh, wow.
Back in the 90s, but before Chris was born.
Yeah.
I was there, and it was what I noticed about that studio was how small it was. It wasn't
really?
like I expected. You kind of have this vision of like
A cavernous,
huge
big,
cavernous space, but no, this was just kind of like the size of House of Vibes, maybe a little bit higher ceiling, but not much bigger. Yeah, and
the Wrecking Crew guys and that.
and they squeezed them all in there.
And how come
and
you
they said,
can't
okay,
get that kind of sound?
what? Oh, we can.
How dare you?
We're trying to get our own sound.
Right,
No,
exactly.
but when I went in there, they said, okay, this is where Hal Blaine used to put his drums, right up against the control room window in the corner. And then they would all like sit in a row on the sides and stuff. And that's how they set up in that room. And it wasn't a big room. that was kind of the amazing thing about it.
I just wanted to ask Marty, or maybe Kurt knows, about the Nick Piunti track, Hang On to Your Ego. Did Nick decide to do that alternate version of I Know There's an Answer, or did someone suggest that to him?
No, that was the same thing. Gave him a couple of tracks. He came up with that one, and that was not Nick Piunti and the Complicated Men. That was Nick and Donnie
Right.
Brown, who played drums on some of Nick's earlier records, and Andy Reid, who has a studio in
Legal Matters.
Yeah, Legal Matters, but his studio was great. And of course, Nick played guitar, Donnie played drums and did all the background vocals, which are incredible. And then Andy played every instrument, engineered and mixed it. So it was just the three of them on the track. I think it came out great. You know?
Oh yeah, no, it's fantastic. I just was surprised that they went with that kind of nugget there, that Hang On to Your Ego version, instead
you
of.
have to be careful when you say the nugget in front of Kurt.
Watch it, Marty.
The other one I wanted to mention is I'd Love for Just Once to See You by the Anderson Council. That is like a song I was even kind of unfamiliar with. That just jumped out of left field, but it's such a great, cool kind of power pop-ish track. Did the guys in the Anderson Council come up with that? Did they?
Yeah, I can speak to that one. They had a few ideas, and I think Peter, probably like Chris, was maybe not the most natural Brian Wilson aficionado, and was looking for a way in for the Anderson Council to find a way to to put their own stamp on it, and they picked three songs. Here Today was the third that they did, and they did a great version of it, but we couldn't fit it on the record. In fact, Marty thought it was the best track, so maybe it'll come out one day. But they came in with those three, and we started working on I'd Love Just Once to See You in the Nude. And they didn't quite have it together as a band, but they came in as a group into House of Vibes, and we worked the band and just said, something's not right. And because I've done so many records with the council, I know their sound. And I just kind of guided them to sound like they sound on the track.
Something different about this, and it's the guitar sound.
Yeah, maybe.
The guitar sound is very different than other.
You know why? It's a new. There's a new council member, Mike Potenza, is a new Anderson Council guitar player, the new guitar player for the Anderson Council, and so he comes in, with what he just brought a different style to the table. And it's kind of always the same thing when the way we work, with the council and a lot of bands, we would do a basic track with all of them playing, and then we would do overdub lead guitar stuff. And that's where I'm sitting there with whoever the guitar player is in the council, and the new one is Mike Potenza, and we're sitting there. We had never worked before other than the basic track, and we're just searching for something to make the track really happen. And so we settled on, in that case, I think it was a lap steel. He brought in a lap steel guitar. Is that right, Marty? Wow. I think it's a lap steel. So we thought, all this cool bendy, slidey stuff you can do. And that's what led us to do different things. So between him and I, we just cooked up this, lead guitar backing for the whole thing. And it really kind of worked. But it's all subject to Marty. We do a rough mix, and the band first would say, oh, we love this or we hate it. Then Marty would weigh in. So that's always my experience, getting back to one of your other questions about, what if Marty doesn't like it? That's kind of, that's my seat. I sit there, and if Marty doesn't like it, I'm the first to know. And he kind of goes, well,
there's a
crack the whip.
Well,
and get those guys in shape.
I have a secret way of getting people to.
What's the secret?
What's your secret, Marty?
We're not even sure. I mean, we weren't sure with the Lisa Michaels and Super 8 when we wanted to change some things. There's no way he's going to go. I mean, he doesn't really even know you. This is his baby. And then. Watch. And then all of a sudden we did this stuff and we said, and he says, oh my God, Kurt, you want to do everything? It was
That
like,
is really what happened.
he said, Kurt, you want to produce everything? I'll just move in the background, and just write.
Yeah, his name is Trip from Scotland, and he was so reluctant to give up his baby, and he was just so reluctant to do it. And I saw the emails going back and forth, and Marty just said, let's just try this and see how it works. And I think was the first track, was it Don't Worry Baby?
Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah, so I just worked it over. And again, it was just, how do I make this track jump off the speakers is always the thing to do, because, it's really, there's no point in making something that nobody wants to listen to, right?
Yeah.
Why bother? So, that I would be the first stop for Marty to kind of, make this work. And so I kind of make it work in the way I know how. And then hopefully he likes it. He passes it on to them. They loved it. Now they want us to do everything. So
Cool. Marty, one of the problems that we had with Don't Worry Baby, if you notice, there's like a motorcycle sound.
Yeah, beginning and the end.
that's
Yeah.
not a problem. That's a good thing.
Well, no,
Like
no,
you're
that
in the
was the
pack.
problem. The problem is that originally it was throughout the whole track.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't understand, like, there's some kind of guitar track in here, buried, that's driving me crazy. That's got.
You said it was like some distortion or something.
Right.
I listened to it.
Turns out it was a motorcycle.
He's got this motorcycle going through the whole
running the
thing.
whole track. So it's like
I think it works well at the beginning and the end because it gives it kind of like that
Well, yeah.
60s girl group
Oh, yeah,
feel.
yeah.
Yeah.
You don't
leader of
want
the
to
pack.
overdo it.
I mean, Lisa did a zillion vocals on that thing, as she's going to be doing on the Lisa Michaels and Super 8 album that'll come out in 2022. I mean, she does. I don't know, Kurt, how many vocals were on? How many vocals are on the track that you're going to mix this coming week?
Oh my God, there was just a stack of tracks.
It's like
And,
stack of tracks, except with
Stack of
vocals.
tracks.
Yeah.
And you just have to work through them. A lot of them are doubles. They're like, there's a thing called double tracking. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. If you sing a track and then sing it again, you get this great sound. It's like
Good
the early
effect, yeah.
Beatles sound,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
phenomenal. And Brian Wilson did that. And just a way to, if you double the vocals up, you get a sparkle and a shimmer to them that is hard to do when you have just one set of tracks. And it's not cheating because it's you singing twice,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
so a lot of those, then that stack of tracks would probably be doubles, and sometimes you even get bands that do triples.
Right.
Which,
Yeah.
then you're going crazy.
Lisa has many tracks.
Yeah.
Marty, Lisa is the newest signee to Jem Records, correct? Is she fairly new on the label?
Right, Lisa Michaels and Super 8 is signed as a band, and they're the newest artist. Their album is almost done. I mean, Kurt is going to remix it, sometime in the fall, and it'll come out in 2022.
Sometime next
I
year.
wanted to have them on this record because I wanted to introduce them and to people, or the Jem artists, that they're part of the Jem stable.
So, Marty, anything you'd like to share about the future with Jem? You mentioned Lisa Michaels and Super 8 may have something next year. Anything else you can share or like to talk about?
Oh yeah, I'll basically go through stuff because some stuff's been announced. Jonathan Pushkar's record came out like last week or week before that. Brian Wilson comes out July 16th. The Weaklings in Their Own Right comes out September 17th. It's a live album. The Gripweeds are going to have a new album. I'm not going to say what the title is. We're not going to talk about it at all, but it comes out November 12th. Okay.
Oh,
Awesome.
And then
fantastic.
in 2022, there's going to be a solo album by Bob Berger. There'll be the new Anderson Council record. There'll be a new Nick Puente record. There'll be the Lisa Michaels and the Super 8 record. And hopefully in the fall of 2022, there'll be a new Weekling studio record. And I think that's, yeah. But then again, I'll probably sign somebody in 2022. And
No, I just wanted to get back to saying that this is coming out July 16th, and this is fabulous. I love this album. Marty, you really knocked it out of the park with this one, with all the great artists on here
You
and
all did.
songs, and of course Kurt with his major impact on this album, being so involved in it. And just want to thank the three of you for being here. Steve,
Thank you.
anything else you had to say before we do our big
Um,
ending here, or?
apart from the fact that I'm still rather upset because I sent in my a cappella Sunflower medley to Marty for the album, and he did not use it.
You didn't use
Oh,
it?
no.
Oh, man.
That's gonna go on the bonus disc along.
Okay. Oh, the deluxe edition.
Listen, I hope everybody likes this record. I mean,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
every one of these artists put in a great amount of work to get this record, because we did I think a great job on Jem Celebrates John Lennon record last October, but I think this record is even better.
Yeah.
I think the sounds are better. I think people were able to spread out a lot more. It was a little bit of intimidation with John Lennon because he's a Beatle, but I think here people got to really get into it.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Matt and Steve Show. We really appreciate all three of you for joining us, and we appreciate all of you for tuning in and watching. And we will see you next time on the Matt and Steve Show. Goodbye, everybody.